Good morning, hello, welcome. Remember the 5th of December. It's the time for another door in the TooFatLardies advent calendar, and it falls to me to open this one on the 5th. Let's reach for the envelope. Lovely envelope. Beautiful handwriting. Okay, let's get this open. Right, what does it say? Dear Nick, that's me. Terrain wish. Given time and a modest budget, what 6-foot by 4-foot terrain setup would you build, and what games would you play on it? Talk about techniques, material you would use, etc. Okay. Right, well, I assume that this has to be something that I don't already have, although the one that's in my head actually is one that I am planning and I have already got a little bit of stuff for, but it's still, it's still something that's going to be fit within the envelope for this modest budget. I realise that I'm getting more and more World War II centric in my games, and all I talk about now is World War II, but this is a World War II battlefield, funnily enough. I would like to do an urban battlefield. Now, if you're aware of the games we've done over the past few years, you might say, well, we've already done an urban battlefield. We've certainly done suburban battlefields. And what I've got in my mind's eye is something that's not quite as intense as Stalingrad. You know, we're not talking about big apartment blocks necessarily. But I am thinking about something that represents the inner streets of a secondary town a bit more, with a few more built-up buildings. You know, as you get into the town centre, you get some big 3-storey buildings. My aim there would be that I'd want to test out some small unit tactics. You know, how do you clear a part of town? How do you clear a way down the street? We all know about manuals that were written about fighting in built-up areas, for instance. Well, you know, the fish and chips and all that kind of stuff. Well, this would be a great chance actually to test out those tactics and try to push a platoon or even a in terms of big chain of command, you know, perhaps even a company down the street, and see how those tactics play out. Maybe with some armor support. Maybe have some games, you know, in set in the kind of dying stages of a stubborn enemy defense, where few last minute hold out units of troops are trying to hold out, etc. That would be good. Also, I think with it being an urban terrain like that, if I got it right, I would be able to naturally link it up with my dockyard area. So this year I've been building a dockyard for sort of Go Commando games, and actually if I got it right, the dockyard could link into an urban setup that would be more into the centre of town. That'd be quite nice, wouldn't it, to lay tables together? I quite like to think about how we create bigger games from a number of smaller tables, and if we do our table designs in a clever way, we can build, you know, a big area of a battleground. So what would I use for that? Describe techniques and material. Well, okay, so I guess really, if we do it on a modest budget, you know, you could start with just a cobblestone cloth. Geek Villain, for instance, do a great cobblestone cloth, which is brilliant for making the sort of first level of this game. I guess if we could push the boat out a little bit on budget, I might go for some terrain boards. And the reason terrain boards are quite attractive, you know, is that you can go down into them, can't you? You can make a few gullyways or a few ditches, and they're really important and exciting to do that. But my garage is full as it is. I can just about fold up a cloth. That would be okay. But I think if I got some more terrain boards in, I'd be in big trouble, and put it mildly. In terms of buildings, I think there's quite a lot you can use for these urban setouts. I mean, I know Sarissa, for instance, do some great looking urban buildings, war bases too. You know, they're kind of 3-storey in that classic, what I call French style, but we must be careful here because we don't want to restrict ourselves to a table that can only be used in France. eBay is a fantastic source of various 3D ruined buildings and MDF ruined buildings too, and they can be picked up really quite reasonably for reasonable prices. 3D prints of destroyed buildings are now starting to flood through my list of products on eBay. There's loads of good stuff there. I've bought some stuff already. I have actually got some destroyed 3D apartment block type buildings already that could be great for this kind of table. What I tend to do is get the individual buildings. I then put them on I use placemats. Placemats are quite a nice size for a building, and if you combine that with some Rubicon city walling or railing, rail fences with a bit of a yard, you can get really nice city sort of set up urban area. And if you're doing it so it's been destroyed or shelled, of course, that's loads of fun because you can break it up. And the nice thing about ruined buildings is they tend to look the same whether they're in France or in Belgium or in Holland or in Germany. So, if we get that rubble right, then, France becomes Belgium, becomes Holland, becomes Germany easily enough. Rubble makes the table more generic and therefore more useful. Now, of course, we still need to signal to the onlooker or to the gamer where it is. And the great thing about having buildings based on coasters, of course, is you can flop them around, mix them around. And that means that we can get... so in France, for instance, you might have a cafe on a corner. In Holland, you might have a garage on a corner. In Germany, you might have a hardware store, maybe. But each one with signage in the native language. So it tells instantly the onlooker where it is that this action is taking place. Signage and all that small stuff. Look, this is me you're talking to, right? You know that I'm going to talk about clutter because clutter is vitally important, I think, in these games, in painting the picture for where this action is going to take place. I suppose you could add a railway line with a small station. Again, MDF railway stations exist. 3D print railway stations are really nice to pick up. You can use different railway line. Actually, I've got HO00 railway line that I use with Chinny 28mm, which some people might say is a bit out of scale, but you know what? It's okay for what you need it to do. You can, of course, use O gauge, which is closer. I think is it 1/43, something like that. But I don't think you need to go to that kind of extent. You need to designate an area where the railway would be, because they make interesting approachways, don't they, where the railway is. And of course you can have broken railway tracks, etc. And I know that Joe in Watford has got some fantastic, Joe the Wargamer has got some fantastic examples of this that he's done in recent years, and his tables always look great for this kind of thing. Quite inspirational, so look him up if you don't know about that already. If we're in an urban environment, I think it's important one of the buildings will need to be the post office or the telephone exchange, or maybe even the local Gestapo headquarters. That will give it a bit of excitement. Buildings have a bit of purpose to them, and of course we can put stuff in buildings now. We can, there's so much available terrain and even furniture that you can put in these buildings to make some of these tables look fantastic. So we would need loads and loads of scatter as well. Lots of scatter, railway ballast, bits of clippings from roof tiles from MDF buildings that you made before, shutters, furniture, bits of plastic girder from battlefield accessory sets, the odd bit of metal, metal tubing or whatever. All these things, just put them in a big bag with a bit of sharp sand, a bit of basing terrain maybe, mix them all up, and within over time you'll soon get a great bag full of stuff that you can just tip on the table to represent rubble, because rubble gets everywhere in urban terrain. You can even buy 1/48 scale small bricks, and I've got a few packs of those, and again just throw those on. They make it look really good as well. So for me it would be an urban terrain, 6 or 8 houses down one side of the table, bit of a town square maybe, perhaps a demolished church, cobbled streets, again achieved with the cobbled mats, and loads and loads of scatter. And I think actually 6x4, that would look superb. And I just realised that in doing this advent calendar entry, I've added about 10 things to my Christmas list. So I better get something in the post now to Santa and see if any of these dreams can be turned into a reality for next year.